Good afternoon. Today is Monday, March 8th, 2021. It's 5 p.m. If you can join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes or additions? None? Look for a motion to approve.
Hearing none, I will make a motion to approve the agenda for March 8th, 2021.
Second.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the general ledger report in the amount of $410,754.05 for the February 24th, 2021 payroll.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
I make a motion to accept the payment listing reports in the amount of $361,432.51 for warrants through March 4th, 2021.
Second.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes. We have meeting minutes to approve.
I make a motion to accept the February 22nd, 2021 regular trustee meeting minutes.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes. This time we open the podium up to any citizens desiring to speak. Seeing none, we'll move on. We have no old business and we have some new business. So, Mr. Administrator.
Thank you, Board. First item is on page 14 of your packet is a resolution to allow reimbursement for township employees that are Medicare Parts B and D eligible. This will be a strictly reimbursement process, so if they are eligible, they can waive the township's insurance, excuse me, and then apply for the Medicare reimbursement. So they'll have to pay the reimbursement up front, or pay the Medicare payment up front, and then submit it to the township for approval. If there are no questions, you can pass the motion as presented, or excuse me, resolution as presented.
I make a motion to adopt a resolution to approve reimbursement of Medicare Part B and D premiums as presented.
Second.
Trustee Dean?
Yes.
Trustee Kretz?
Yes.
Trustee Wallace?
Abstain.
Thank you, Board. Next item is a resolution on page 16 of your packet that establishes a finance department, and followed by an Exhibit A, which would be the new township organizational chart, which is also attached to the resolution in the packet. As the Board recall, in the budget meeting, there was discussion in December of last year about creating a finance department under the administrator with the support of the fiscal officer, essentially creating a staff under the administrator that is essentially election proof, so it's not subject to change potentially every 4 years with a potential change of a fiscal officer. We have reviewed this with legal, and it has passed legal review, and any modifications legal had in regards to the resolution have been added. The biggest section is under page 17 of your packet is now therefore be resolved. The 4 sections there, that one adopts the organizational chart, which creates essentially the finance department, and allows me to amend the job descriptions to the reporting authority. We will be adding section 4 as a part of the job descriptions that clearly states that the fiscal officer under the statute can assign staff other than fiscal office staff to help assist in fulfilling the duties of the fiscal officer. One of the things that Mr. Rushing and I have discussed regarding this is that we would probably have meetings on the off weeks of the trustee meetings with the finance manager, which will now be a finance director, and the fiscal officer and myself, so that we keep the clear communication as identified in the organizational chart. If there are no questions, you're going to pass it as presented.
I'll just ask a question for record. Mr. Rushing, are you totally in agreement with this resolution, and are you recommending it also?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Wallace. For the record, I know that I shared with the board in previous meetings, but I'm in complete support of this. It's been part of the reason why I ran for the office and part of my goals during my term here. As Mr. Zaharieff mentioned, what we're doing is essentially taking best practices found in other like-sized townships. We're applying it to Beavercreek so that we have a professional and robust finance department that has a clear line of reporting and communication, but that maintains the statutory obligations of my office. I think this is increases the oversight and the transparency of the office, and allows again to separate the idea that every 4 years there could be a potential 100% staff change. That it allows the individuals who are managing the office to continue as they were. So I'm in complete support of this. I view it as we're changing some reporting lines, and we're establishing procedures and policies. But in terms of how I look at the office and the staff there, they're more than competent, irregardless of who they report to on a day-to-day. So this is more or less, we're cleaning up some things that should have been done a long time ago, and we're moving forward for the next 5-10 years.
I think that's awesome. I would recommend that if you find any communication difficulties, tell the board. But I think that you and Mr. Zaharieff have worked well already, so I think that's going to be a really good process for Beavercreek Township. Thank you.
One thing to add, Board, in regards to on page 18 of your packet, this is also reflects the changes that the Board has already made in some other departments, and the addition of also the supervisor and the substation. The previous organizational chart had the major of the patrol section on staff. Now that we've added Sergeant Moore to the position, he'll be at the staff level, department head level, and then the community development and risk you'll see there as well as added. That if you see the department and development and risk under the department as well. So those are the probably 3 major changes as the creation of the finance department. There are some additional reporting lines as well, but by adopting this, you're also adopting this resolution is also adopting the amended organizational chart for the township.
Great.
I will be happy to make a motion to adopt the resolution as resolution number 202-10308, admin E, as written.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Crutz.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 19 of your packet is the biweekly report from the Sheriff's Office, followed by the monthly report on page 43. Sergeant Moore is on here to answer any questions.
Any questions for Sergeant Moore?
I have none.
Thank you for the report. Stay safe.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 53 is a policy update. This is a new policy. That's why you don't see any red lines or any approved dates or revised or review dates on here. This is a lactation break policy. This was recommended by risk management as well as OTARMA, or risk management consultants through OTARMA, and some of the other best practices we've seen, as well as a recommendation that came out last year from the prosecutor's office. Are there any questions?
I had none.
I had none.
You can pass a motion as presented, and it will be HR. I apologize, there's not a motion number. My fault.
It's the sample motion above. Sorry.
Yeah, just pass them as presented.
The policy, you can just say the policy if you want.
Okay. Find it again.
Page 53.
I make a motion to approve the policy update for the lactation breaks as presented.
Second, sorry.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Page 55 is a biweekly report for HR. Discussion is on here if you have any questions.
I had a question, Trish, how's it working out with the Bamboo HR?
I really like it. I think it's very user-friendly. It's nice to have the majority of our information for employees in one place rather than in multiple areas. So if we need to run reports or, look up something, it's all in one software system. So I prefer it over anything that we've had so far.
Thank you. I had no other questions.
I didn't have anything additional.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 59. There are several resolutions here. You can, there's sample motions on page 59 for reappointment to roles on the Zoning Commission and/or Board of Zoning Appeals. There will be 4 motions on page 59, and I have the resolutions here for you to sign as well.
Okay, I move to appoint Kristen Horton to the Zoning Commission in the role of Commission Member with term to begin March 31st, 2021 and to end March 30th, 2026 as presented in Resolution Number 202-103-08-CDR-A.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
I make a motion to appoint John Thomas to the Board of Zoning Appeals in the role of board member with a term beginning March 31st, 2021 to end March 30th, 2025, as presented in resolution number 202-10308-CDRB.
Second.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
I move to appoint Andrew Peed to the Board of Zoning Appeals in the role of board member with term to begin March 31st, 2021 and to end March 30th, 2023 as presented in resolution number 202-103-08-CDR-C.
Second?
Second.
Second. Sorry.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes.
I make a motion to appoint Emil Martinzek to Board of Zoning Appeals in the role of board member with a term to begin March 31st, 2024 and to end March 30th, 2023. Is that correct?
No,
Should that be 2021?
it should be,
March
Let's see
31,
what it says in the
2021.
21 and to end March 30th, 2023?
so it should begin March 31st of 2021 and expire March 30th of 2024.
Okay, in my prior motion, we ended at March 30th, 2023.
Yeah, so we try to stagger them.
Okay, so that one
Should
is
be
okay.
staggered.
Yeah, what we try to do is stagger them.
Okay.
Okay.
So it should start March 31st, 2021 and end March
Yeah,
30th, 2024.
right. So you have one going 23, 24, 25, and 26.
Right,
Okay.
okay.
As presented in resolution number 202-10308-CDRD as amended or fixed if it's
Amended.
not correct in
Yeah,
there.
it's correct on the resolution.
Okay.
Okay.
Second.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Cruz.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Next item is on page 60, is the biweekly report for the Community Development and Rest Department. If you have any questions, Mr. Grogan is here to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Grogan?
I have none.
I have. On the property maintenance section, we have the property on Acne Road. We're going to Fairborn prosecutor on that. And the other three are moving along. Those fences are, all right, just wanted to check. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Grogan?
I had nothing additional.
Just a shout out to our community risk and or development and risk team, I'll call it. And I'll touch on it later, but at regional planning, we had some challenges that we worked through, and it was a collaborative effort of everybody at the township level as well as at the county level and the developer to reach a solution that I think will be a good interim solution, and also good, for no pun intended, build a bridge to hopefully something in the future that could be even better for Greene County. But we were able to take the handcuffs off the developer and get things moving. So appreciate your help. Thank you. Anything else on that? We'll move on to IT.
Thank you, Board. First item's on page 70 of your packet is a surplus resolution for Microsoft Surface. You can pass it as presented.
I move to pass resolution number 20210308-IT-A, March 8th, 2021, as presented.
Second.
Trustee Wallace,
Yes.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Cruz.
Yes.
Thank you, Board. Next item's on page 72 of your packet. It's the biweekly report, followed by on page 74, the updated ticket chart. Are there any questions?
I don't have any questions, but I would like to compliment the IT people for the hard work they did when we had our shutdown. They seemed to be very dedicated to making sure everything was up and running again, and appreciated that we didn't, it looked like the administrator didn't have to pull his hair out and complain. At least we didn't hear anything, so.
It was unfortunately, it was a major failure, but myself and Chief Easter had very little time associated with it.
Good. Thank you. On to roads.
Thank you, Board. Next item's on page 75 is the biweekly report for the roads. Mr. Parks here to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Parks?
Mr. Parks, do we have surplus on the salt now?
We're getting closer by the day. We're getting like 1 or 2 loads once a week, where we've got the bulk of the order in, so. And hopefully, it'll be in the barn come next winter, because hopefully we're done.
I agree.
Out of curiosity, so based on the salt that we used and then the salt we're receiving, but if you receive the balance of what you've ordered, will the barn be full, or will there be room to add to it before next season?
Oh, there'll be room to add to it for next season.
Okay.
What we're up against, I think, at this point, is what we reserved was 1,200 ton. That is what we have ordered. We'll see between now and the end of the month, because I think the contract's up in April, if they have any extra, and I don't think they will.
Sure.
To be honest.
Yeah, so I'm assuming there's any leftover would have already been pre-ordered when someone else.
Right, and we're sitting on like 2/3 of the market, so that's more than enough to get started.
Yeah, okay, great. And then is there any chatter with regards to pricing for next year based on what happened this year?
Well, fortunately for us, we signed a 2-year contract through Swamp for G.
Okay,
So it'll go up $10 a ton next year. Now, when we go back out in 23, it'll be interesting to see, or 22, for the 23 season, it'll be interesting to see where the price goes.
yeah, okay, great. Any other questions? Thank you.
Nothing additional.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Thank you.
Station 65 update.
Thank you, Board. Next item's on page 77. You have Station 65 update, followed by the COVID impact and the biweekly report. Chief Annenboss is here to answer any questions.
Good afternoon. So, on your report, you said we remain about 14 days behind. Are we or the contractor doing anything to start to make that up before the rains start?
I believe they're trying to right now, and the report I got was late last week, and obviously we've had a couple good days since then. I don't know if they worked through the weekend, but when I drove by yesterday, it looked like they had been making good progress. So my guess is that the next report will have made some of that time up. I just don't know right now where that's at.
Board, they were out over the weekend. They were on site Saturday, and there was a few employees out there on Sunday.
Okay. And do we have a breakdown of where we ended up relative? It does not appear that we're gonna, unless we did already, that we're gonna burn our heat construction allowance that we had kind of built into that. Is
No,
that
we're not gonna be into that.
okay?
Yeah.
So as far as what we appropriated to that, can that, if and when that were needed to help make up a lag? So, for example, if there's an opportunity where we have a good stretch where we could keep people on site longer or bring them in over a weekend for more than out of the ordinary, do we have the option to use those dollars and shift them, or is that something that we're?
I'd have to go back and look at the agreement, but.
I mean, the
it's
agreement's
definitely
something,
something we
I'm just
can
saying from our perspective,
Yeah.
from an accounting perspective, it's to the project,
Correct,
whether it's
yeah.
allocated here or there on
Yeah,
the,
that's
as a
correct.
line item on the contract.
That's
So,
right.
just something to maybe keep in mind, so just as we go into the rainy season.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Or there are two change orders.
great.
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead, Chief.
one is anticipated to be a no cost, and the
I
other,
like
I
that.
don't know what the scale of the cost is, but we should have that. It sounds like we'll have that for the next meeting, so it's not something that'll be drug out very far. We'll know pretty quick what the impact's gonna be.
Okay. Related to engineering or related to design change or both?
One is interior finishes, but I'm not sure specifics beyond that, and the other is the hydrant, and I believe the fire department connection location. There was some, it was mislocated, or it's located someplace beyond where we thought it was. And so, again, depending on what the resolution has to be, will drive if there's a cost or not, so.
Okay,
Unfortunately, I don't have any more detail than that, Mr. Zahari, if may.
Yeah, the Chief's correct on the water line issue. The second is interior finishing, and it's related to cabinets, countertops. I'm sorry, not cabinets, countertops. When we went back and looked at the original station design, when we were making a lot of cuts, this was something that didn't make it back in regards to a single solid surface on the countertops. So it was the old, which you would get in the residential, which was just the laminate piece on there. So we looked at what that cost was going to be to change to the solid, much like the rest of the fire stations.
okay. Okay. COVID-19 impact?
So not much different here than the past couple weeks, other than we return shipment from Mattel. So that option has been exhausted. The good news is between the decrease in PPE required on incidents because of some of the changes that have happened, including the vaccinations, and due to the receiving that and some backordered materials, we're up to about 1,800 incident surplus. So that's a very comfortable, it's about a 4-month probably supply for us in reserve. And we're going to continue building that. We haven't decided on a final figure yet, but we'll continue to build that so that if we have either another disruption in supply chain or an increase in calls, we're well situated to handle that without having to either put patients or crews at risk or have to rely on getting materials from other agencies, EMA, other fire departments and the like. So we'll continue to work on that.
Okay.
The other thing is of note, and I'll probably just bring this up every meeting because it's so impactful, our auxiliary is doing a huge job out at the COVID vaccination site. Matter of fact, I saw an email today. They added an additional day this week, and the auxiliary had already stepped in to fill all the volunteer positions for that. So they continue to be a primary support force out there, in addition to some of the crews that we have that are out supporting either the EMS or the actual vaccination efforts. So there are over 1,000 hours of volunteerism so far this year just on the COVID incident, and that's not including all the other ways they support us on scene and at our trainings and things like that. So they're doing a great job. Our community is very lucky to have folks like that that are willing to step up and help.
Absolutely. On the PPE, as far as in the absence of the Battelle program, as far as the recycling of those, so in the absence of that, as far as the PPE that our burn rate now, is it one single use and done, single shift and done? How are we handling that?
The N95s are still kind of a case by case. They can be reused until they are no longer usable. It kind of sounds kind of funny to say it that way, but the crews can keep them in a paper bag, can use them multiple times, and it really depends on if they get damaged, if they get wet, if they get exposed or contaminated in some way. Those will obviously be an immediate end of life of that particular product. But if it's, say, an engine crew that's carrying a bag in and a bag out, or maybe taking questions on a clipboard, they may be able to get several uses. They may be able to get a shift or more out of it. So it's very much a use-by-use condition. That's not really good. I don't know that we've run any numbers to try and figure out how many we're getting on average.
Okay. Okay, but not a concern at this point. So it sounds like based on inventory. Okay.
No, at this point we're still able to, we're building our surplus. We're not using into our surplus. That's our goal right now. And like I said, we'll work out a final surplus target probably here in the next couple months as things are starting to settle down again. And then we'll work to reach that target and then maintain it long term.
Okay. Any other questions for the chief on those two issues?
No, I don't have any questions, but I would like to publicly shout out to our auxiliary is doing a wonderful job. Got my second shot last week, and it was nice to see our firefighters there also giving the shots. What's the percentage of firefighters and EMS that have taken their second shot?
The last I saw, it's still about 2/3 have received it and 1/3 has declined. And those who have received it, I believe, are all completely caught up. So they've had both of the two vaccinations. And then the folks who have chosen not to, obviously, I don't know that any of them have changed their mind at this point.
Sure.
Thank you. Nothing else.
On the bi-weekly, any questions for the chief?
Amanda.
I had no.
I did just want to point out, ran the overdose numbers that were requested about 2 meetings ago, 3 meetings ago.
Yep.
And the reporting is slightly different now that we're using our ESO online, so it's not exactly an apples-to-apples comparison in that we had, I want to say there were 8 or 10 different search vectors in the original definition of overdose, and there's 6 or 7 in this one. So the coding changes that a little bit, but it's close enough that I feel comfortable that we can at least look at them and make a fairly honest assessment. And looking at it, pre-pandemic, we were seeing about 185 patients in a 2-week period. Post, we're down to about 170 on average, so obviously can be above or below that. But our percentage of overdoses as total calls for the pre and post period are almost exactly the same. So within 200ths of a percentage, 200ths of a percentage. So for all intents and purposes, we haven't seen a major change in overdoses or related fatalities as a result of the pandemic that other places have seen. So we've been very fortunate in that regard.
Great, thank you for the follow-through. Anything else for the chief?
No?
Nothing else, thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Frick,
Nothing today.
thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rushing,
Thank you, sir. Just a few informational items. The board received their biweekly finance report. Quite lengthy, several new reports due to activity that occurred since last meeting. I do want to point out we did receive another settlement from the Greene County Auditor in terms of real estate taxes. And to date, we received $6,421,000. The breakdown is as followed. We have received $371,000 in the general fund, $454,000 in the road and bridge fund, $5,387,000 in the fire fund, and $209,000 in the general fund. That will be the last advancement. The next settlement will be the semi-annual settlement for the final appropriation of the real estate taxes. In addition, in the finance report, you did receive the unaudited financial statements for 2020. As you see, it's taken on a different look from previous financial statements. We engaged Julian Grube. Julian Grube is a financial statement compiler. This was included in the 2021 budget. As the board knows, as I mentioned, for 2021, we will be filing GAAP statements for our financial statements. Right now, we only file regulatory cash basis financial statements. Julian Grube is a third party, independent from us, obviously, and they will be assisting staff in completing those financial statements, which is another best practice in both the private and public sector. And then finally, we did have an investment oversight committee meeting, but I will save those comments. I believe there's a portion of the meeting for the committee reports. Next meeting, we will have the permanent appropriations for the board to consider. Staff did receive the final amended certificate of resources. Again, the certificate of resources is kind of like the ceiling, as it were. That's the legal allowance in which the board is able to appropriate to. So once we receive the amended certificate of resources, which reflects actual end fund balances for 2020, we take actual year-end balances from 2020, we add in expected revenues for the current year, and then that equals your total available resources or the legal allotment in which the board is able to appropriate to. Staff, I know, has been working meetings on creating the final appropriations to make sure we're in line with the certificate of resources, and we'll have that to the board at next meeting to adopt, and also discuss some new funds and some advances and transfers we're looking at as well. But other than that, besides the investment oversight committee, that is all I have. Thank you.
great,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Trustees, MVRPC.
We had a meeting last week. We had election of officers. The chair is still going to be Chris Mucher from Miami Township, Greene County. First vice chairperson is Greg Simmons from Miami County, and second vice chairperson is Sarah Lomas from the city of Riverside, Montgomery County. I was reelected back to the executive board, and That was it for the election. And then they put out a notice that I sent to Mr. Zaharieff that there's new track, applications open, and he will be pouncing on that.
Absolutely.
So, other than that, that's all I have for Miami Valley Regional Planning.
Great. Anything on TAC?
TAC had a meeting and the agenda was in your packet.
Greene County Regional Planning, we had a pretty active session, so there were 3 items, I guess, on the agenda at the last meeting, and that was held on, we had a meeting on February 23rd of the full commission, and then we followed that with another follow-on meeting last Tuesday. But the February 23rd meeting, there was the Claiborne Greens and Stonehill Village replat. That was essentially taking a postage stamp from Claiborne and moving it over into the Bluegrass, and the full commission was supportive of that. The McIntyre property rezoning, essentially, or a zoning map amendment from agricultural to residential. There was some discussion there with regards to lift stations and versus making them into estate lots, but in general, it was supported. The county prefers anything that does not require a lift station from their perspective, but understands that sometimes they're not avoidable. And then the Bluegrass crossings, and that's where essentially that item got tabled that evening, and in an attempt essentially to meet with the engineer, the developer, the township, and then the engineer's traffic study consultant that she hired to determine if a realignment of Dayton Xenia was feasible. And Mr. Zaharieff and I actually had conversations with the school superintendent, got some verbal commitments of support there in principle and kind of in theory to be worked out between the developer, the nursing home that we already approved, and the schools and the fire department relative to an emergency access to work through that property. But then at the end of the day, we hit a couple roadblocks. The engineer had concerns over the essentially construction. The term constructability was thrown out in, around, and near the current high voltage lines. And that created a situation where we ended up deciding to table the conversation about realignment and go back to having just an overbrook trail built to collector standards coming in off of Trayvine, and allow the developer to get moving on their nursing home and on the residential component, the cottages on the north side. There's still some things to be worked out. The developer expressed sincere good faith to work with the county and the township, but at the end of the day, the clock was ticking and the time was up, so we had to make a decision, and it was finally passed last week at the special meeting that we called, and so that Bluegrass crossing is moving again now. So again, thanks to everybody that was involved in that. School superintendent, or I'm sorry, health department.
The regular health department meeting I was not able to attend on Thursday, but there is a district advisory council meeting on the 16th that I'll log into.
Okay.
School superintendent, city manager.
Didn't have a meeting with the superintendent since the last trustee meeting. I did have to unfortunately cancel my meeting with the city manager to attend the public meeting on track applications, which he understood. There will be 3 projects pushed forward by Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission. One in Beavercreek Township, which is the Trayvine Valley US 35 Interchange project. Myself and our county engineer, Stephanie Goff, will be meeting with the county commissioners in a work session on Thursday to discuss the application. We have received support letters, more than we've received in the past in regards to moving the project forward, as well as Congressman Turner's office is involved this time as well. The application is due, I believe, March 18th. We plan to have all the support letters and a complete application, hopefully with a local match, by March 12th to submit our application. Miami Valley Regional Planning Commission will also be considering a track application for And this will be a joint project between Sugar Creek, City of Centerville, Montgomery County, and Greene County for the Wilmington I-675 interchange and modifications there. And a Tier 2 application for the City of Beavercreek that will be 675 and Grange Hall interchange. Tier 2 would be obviously design and right-of-way acquisition, which our project is already in Tier 2, so we would be asking for Tier 1 construction money to move forward. So the parameters, there were no applications last year. I will tell you, by attending the track meeting, they actually brought up our project out of all state projects that were, they didn't really discuss any, and they kind of brought up just a few they would like to see. The good news is last year, as the board knows, track did not accept any applications related to COVID because no one was driving, and funding decreased because of the gas tax. However, with some of the stimulus money related to COVID, to the CARES Act, the state of Ohio took $100 million of that money and put it back into track applications, moving 3 projects that were eliminated last year out of Tier 1 that would have to reapply this year for Tier 1. Those projects that were already approved got moved back to Tier 1 status for funding. So we will not be competing against those 3 projects, which are good news. The parameters are 24 million and above. The projects have to be have a local match, obviously, and so same parameters as we saw 2 years ago pre-COVID. So we will have that application as soon as we know how they're going to handle it during the COVID. Usually they have a public meeting. Track did say they are working to figure out how to have a public hearings this year that allow not only communities with applications to attend, but obviously residents that would like to discuss. 2 years ago, they did them regionally, which was nice. 3 years ago, everything was in Columbus. So we'll stay tuned to that. I'll provide some additional information on that. City manager and I did, as I called him to cancel the meeting, we did talk about the Super Street real briefly. We are having also quarterly meetings that the City of Beavercreek is involved in District 8, ODOT District 8. This was put together by Stephanie Goff, our county engineer, and this is to go through all projects that are going on in District 8. So essentially every jurisdiction has something going on in District 8. So the question came up, where the status of the Super Street. If you've been through the Super Street, you can see there's a lot of activity going on. You're going to see a lot more activity in the next week or two. They have to finish up a few things, and then there'll be shifting lanes probably in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So they did all the outside work. So traffic patterns will go to the outside, and they're going to do all the interior work. They are on schedule for completion spring 2022. The actual Super Street will be in operation by fall of this year. Now, if just like any other project and weather, if things get ahead and they're able to do a final layer of pavement and seeding and some landscaping in regards to some damage they've done to some of the properties, it could get done this year. However, that's why it's scheduled to be completed spring of 2022, which will be the final layer of pavement, striping, and any planting of grass and seeds that need to be replaced.
When do they anticipate they're going to put up the sign supports?
The next couple of weeks, yeah.
bridge
The
across.
bases are already in. They were
Right.
put in last year. So we're going to start to see a lot of
They're
movement on
bolting
that.
the poles in place.
Yeah.
That is, when they're going to put the bridge.
The bridge modifications is 95% complete. Those are the few modifications they want to finish in the next couple of weeks so that they can make the lane changes. And as anything else, they'll send it to the city and the township. ODOT puts it out as a press release. We also put it out as on our website as news flashes or alerts, and then of course on social media. So I didn't meet with the city manager, but I came a lot out of the time I was supposed to meet with the city manager.
Right. The Restoration Advisory Board,
No meeting.
Greene County Township Association.
We're having a meeting tomorrow night at 5 o'clock. We have a tour of Greene County Career Center. At 6:30, there's a dinner. It's $10 cash you had to have RSVP'd, so you just can't come in rogue, because they're counting the numbers of people, and each menu item has been selected. So hopefully we'll see you all there, and should be a good meeting.
We do have one item, which is a support letter from the Greene County Township Association to support the US 35 project. So that'll be in consideration. Unfortunately, I cannot be there tomorrow night. I'm double booked in 2 meetings. But that is on the agenda for tomorrow, and I'll make sure someone is available to answer any questions if it comes up.
Okay.
Investment Advisory, the Investment Oversight Committee, Mr. Rushing provided a breakdown from that meeting. I was not able to attend that meeting because I was locked in a room at Regional Planning. But both outcomes turned out okay. The only thing, in addition to the information that's in the packet, that I asked Mr. Rushing for in the future was just to ask Huntington to provide cash flow projection, either on a rolling 12-month, and if they could provide it maybe twice a year, just so we could see that, so that we can at least have a projection going forward. Based on conversations with Mr. Rushing, as far as the projected cash flow, this is not meant to harp on the past, but it is to be so we can learn from the past so that we don't repeat it in the future, is that as far as having our investments go idle and go to cash at the beginning of the year, when you look at, I think we're at roughly, we project 45,000 of essentially income off of our investments this year, compared to a peak of previous years, we were in the 145,000 range. And so when you look at the long-term effects, if you have a rolling versus looking at the trailing 5-year, look at the future 5-year, we're projected essentially, unless something radical would happen with interest rates, we can project that conceivably, had we had that money invested in the year prior to COVID hitting, we would have had at least 3 more years of triple digit, so over 100,000 each year. So the cost of doing nothing and letting it go to cash, the projected cost is roughly $250,000 to $300,000 of township money and taxpayer money that we could have generated that we are not, because it was allowed to go to cash. So with that, Mr. Rushing has anything to add other than what's in the packet?
Just a few highlights for the board's attention. We have just over $6.2 million in institutional investments. These are managed by our investment advisor, Ted Sumner, with Huntington Institutional Investments. We utilize that for our more long-term investments. We are at the max for commercial paper. Ohio revised code only allows 40% of your portfolio to be in commercial paper. Commercial paper takes on a little bit higher risk, but usually has a higher yield. And you can only hold a piece of paper for 270 days before it matures. In addition to that, we have just over $2.9 million in our MMAX account. Although it's not a sweep account, we utilize it as a short-term sweep account. So staff has maintained the same cash flow strategy since I've taken office. We maintain a month's worth of cash in our checking account. Our checking account doesn't earn any interest. Payroll obviously drives what we need in terms of our checking account, and then our AP liability. We then maintain a year's worth of real estate advancements in our MMAX account, which is currently yielding about 8 basis points, which is pretty sad, but right now it is actually effectively what the Fed fund rates are. And then anything in excess of our real estate advancements we put into the Huntington institutional account for more or less a long-term investments, anywhere from commercial paper, which is only 270 days maturity, up until 5 years, which is 5 years is the max Ohio law allows political subdivisions to invest in. As Mr. Kretz said, in 2020, total interest earnings were $71,000. 2021, we're budgeting and projecting $45,000. Unfortunately, as you know in your personal lives, but we will not see any movement in interest until the Fed fund rates move. and they have indicated that that will not occur until, if we're hopeful, maybe end of next year, but probably not even through 2022. In addition to that, our weighted average for our portfolio is about 60 basis points, and our average monthly maturity is about 18 months. Even if we go out for a 2-year callable treasury is at 12 basis points. So right now, across the board, everyone's buying the same things. Banks are overloaded with cash. With the continuous stimulus, there's just not much more to do. We maintain our principles, preservation of principle, liquidity, and yield. We maintain those 3 principles just to ensure we're not, going negative. But even the state of Ohio has canceled their Star Plus program. So the state treasurer has a fund in which you're able to put funds in. They have Star Ohio and Star Plus. Star Plus, they have discontinued completely, and they have no plans to bring it back. So we're all in the same boat, unfortunately, but we're doing our due diligence to try to be fully invested. So as Mr. Kretz said, we don't lose that potential for not having the opportunity there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The only other thing that I'd like to make a comment on is that today is International Women's Day, and I am flanked by 2 very strong women, and so in recognition and appreciation for all women, that whether they stay home, they work, they serve our country, they serve our communities, they serve our children in schools or wherever they may be. So thank you. And other than that, anything else from the trustees?
I had one item, and I'd just like to thank Mr. Zaharia for putting on social media the changes and things that happen at the the fire department, and letting citizens be aware of hazards and or positive things that are happening in the fire department, and then we can share it and post again. So I appreciate that, those shout outs.
Yeah, thank you. That's all staff. I just approve it.
Otherwise, look for a motion to go into executive session under Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G2, to consider the purchase of property for public purposes or for the sale of property at competitive bidding. If premature disclosure of information would give an unfair competitive or bargaining advantage to a person whose personal private interest is adverse to the general public interest. No member of the public body shall use Division G2 of this section as subterfuge for providing covert information to prospective buyers or sellers. The purchase or sale of public property is void if the seller or buyer of the public property has received covert information from a member of the public body that has not been disclosed to the general public in sufficient time for other prospective buyers and sellers to prepare and submit offers.
So
Se-
moved.
Second.
Trustee Dean,
Yes.
Trustee Walls,
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes. Ready? All right. It is 6:21. We'll come out of executive session. Do we have a motion to come out of executive session?
So moved.
Second.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes. Anything else come before the board? If not, a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Trustee Dean.
Yes.
Trustee Wallace.
Yes.
Trustee Kretz.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
You.